Hello and welcome to the Ringside Report.
That's right. Tonight we are going to be talking about Ric Flair making an appearance at AAA's Triple Mania. We're going to be talking about Keith Lee breaking his silence on his WWE hiatus. We'll be talking former WWE star Brian Knobbs hospitalized. We're going to be talking Miro being called out by a former NXT star. We've got CM Punk dropping a major AEW hint. We've got WWE possibly not pushing to keep Adam Cole. We have Chris Jericho saying fans won't know his retirement match. Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair have been pulled from a live event due to unforeseen circumstances. Could this be an omen for SummerSlam? We have Triple H being blamed for not winning the Wednesday Night Wars that never happened, apparently. We have Max Caster potentially leaving AEW. Speculation, I know. And lastly, we have Christian Cage retiring the TNA title. All that coming up right now. So, Carl.
Let's kick off with the Nature Boy himself. So, earlier this week, Ric Flair, as we know, he had been released from his WWE contract, and he took to his social medias basically with a kind of variety of different posts. So firstly, he was back on PWTs with a selection of Nature Boy t-shirts that were available. He posted a old school video from just before his retirement saying, "I will never retire, woo." And he also posted a tweet of himself working out, and he looked pretty fucking ripped, to be fair, as well. Massive guns on the guy, considering how old he is. So he posted all that, which got people kind of speculating, what does it mean? Will we see him in AEW? You know, how long's it going to be, etc., etc. And then out of nowhere, the Nature Boy rocked up at AAA Triple Mania. And yeah, what a fucking surprise that was. He
no one saw that coming.
He showed up to kind of be there in the corner of Andrade El Idolo, who was taking on Kenny Omega for the AAA.
Pretty much his son-in-law at this point. Obviously not married yet, but fiancé to Charlotte. So it just kind of makes sense, doesn't it, really?
Exactly. But yeah, I think it took kind of the wrestling community by storm. Nobody expected to see him there. And, you know, he, by all accounts, has never really worked Mexico before. No Mexico territory. So for him to be there as part of AAA, I'm sure was a big tick off his bucket list and a massive swerve. I think even Kenny Omega apparently was not aware of it. Whether you believe that or not, it remains to be seen. But he came out and said that, yeah, he wasn't aware that Rick was going to be in attendance. But yeah, obviously there was a spot plan between Ric Flair and Conan, who for some reason was coming out with Kenny Omega, which didn't really make much sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so interesting one. Obviously, Ric Flair teaming up with Andrade. What does this mean for, you know, potentially seeing him in AEW and so on and so forth? So yeah, massive shock for the wrestling world. Nate trending as well for like I think he was trending for nearly 2 days straight. I think he also commented on that, just saying like, you know, the ability to trend at like 70 odd years old. That's what being the Nature Boy is all about. So yeah,
I mean, he doesn't fully know what trending is. It has to be explained.
No, of course not.
Or what a tweet is, but you know, he's there. He's popular. It's all good. No, absolute legend in the business, and the more we see of him, the better. Honestly, like what you're saying about him working out and him like looking in great shape, I kind of don't want him see him in the ring. Like maybe taking a bump here and there, you know, like he did with Randy Orton, for instance. But we don't want to see a match. Like I'm already kind of slightly aggrieved enough that we're going to see Sting in a match. So, you know, let's keep the hey, you know.
Yeah, I mean, saying that, I wouldn't be totally against a Ric Flair versus Sting retirement match. I'm not gonna lie. But I mean, it's one of them. I mean, obviously, everyone knows my hatred for Shawn Michaels. But, you know, his retirement match with Shawn was a thing of beauty. The problem was he ended up leaving WWE and went to Impact and had several more matches.
So, like, that was a beautiful way to retire. And sadly, we've mentioned this before, it's an addictive business and it's hard to ever retire, you know. So he couldn't resist, should I say. So I'm sure that bug might get him again. But as I say, couple of bumps here and there to like maybe push a new talent. I'm all for seeing him in the wrestling industry. Just don't want to see a match. I really don't want to see a match. Just don't want to see it, Cal. You do, you sick bastard.
I don't want to see it. Not gonna lie.
So next one, Carl. Obviously, Keith Lee has finally broke his silence on his WWE hiatus. Now, this has been a weird hot topic because he has been essentially, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not going to sit and bitch and moan, he's been through a lot, but as far as I'm concerned, he's been hyping up this news. But then there's so many people like, it's your business, you shouldn't have to tell anyone. I'm like, that's fine, it is his business, you shouldn't have to tell anyone, except for the fact that he's going, I'm going to tell you all, I'm going to find the right way. At some point, I'm going to say something, hey, guess what? I'm still not there, but I will tell you eventually. Like, so now I feel like I want an answer, so, it is what it is. So we're going to talk about it. Unfortunately, Carl, Keith, and I will paraphrase. I would suggest anyone who's listening, if you want to know the full story as Keith Lee says it, he put a YouTube video out to fully explain everything. But in brief, he contracted COVID, and this sort of spiraled into the doctors uncovering heart issues or concerns over his heart, and that put him out of action for a considerable amount of time. The time off and the recovery seems to have dealt with the issues he was having, hence why he's back and wrestling again. But obviously during that time there was a lot of like controversy because Mia Yim had to miss I think it was the Royal Rumble at the time because she caught COVID, and then everyone was blaming her for Keith being off, and he's actually clarified that the entire opposite was the case. She was caring for him in obviously his time of need, and she caught it from him. And he kind of like wanted to make that clear because obviously the internet community's been dicks with her, basically blaming her for it. So he made that very clear. But again, I won't go into all the areas of it. But in brief, it was some worry and some concern over his heart and over these COVID issues. But he is back and better than ever. Not to quote Eric Bischoff's theme music there, sorry.
I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? I think I fully agree with your points. I think he did stir the pot a lot. He could have just remained silent and stuff like that, but obviously he wanted to communicate it in a way that he felt was right. He had other things in mind. Eventually he should come out and release a YouTube video explaining it all. But yeah, obviously scary stuff for him to go through. The important thing is he's back. And hopefully we get to see the best of him. It hasn't gone particularly well so far since he's come back, but 50-50 booking and all, maybe
it kind of makes sense though, because like they can't just throw him right back into the position he was in. So I think a bit of time getting re-established, and then I'm hoping we get to see him in the US title scene soon enough.
Yeah,
I think he'd be a good opponent for Sheamus.
Yeah, or Damian Priest potentially.
Or Damian Priest, sorry then.
Yeah.
I lose track. The US title, for God's sake.
Oh no, Sheamus is still champ, but
Well,
we expect him to lose.
They're going up against each other at SummerSlam, aren't they? Them and Damian.
They are indeed. So the next one to talk about is a bit of sad news. One half of the Nasty Boys, Brian Knobbs, has unfortunately been hospitalized. It's a bit of a scary one, really. He was rushed to the hospital with some major stomach issues. So he was, at the time of kind of recording, he's still undergoing tests to kind of determine the severity of his illness. Also, a year or so ago, he had a full knee replacement, but his good knee, in quotes, has now finally given out as well. Which means that also requires some surgery. And if he doesn't get that surgery done, there's a chance that he's not going to be able to walk, basically. So a GoFundMe has been set up for him. Looking at it as of right now, so the target is $20,000. Currently at nearly $13,500. So not too far away from helping him reach his goal.
And anyone who wants to know where that GoFundMe is, I will drop a link in the description.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, you've got to think he's given a lot to the business, as part of the Nasty Boys and stuff in WWE and WCW over the years. And yeah, obviously he finds himself in a very unfortunate set of circumstances right now. So obviously we wish him a speedy recovery. One just interesting note, really, not to, look at who's donated and all that kind of stuff, but, he's meant to have a lot of big friends in the wrestling world, notably Hulk Hogan and the like, but they certainly haven't, donated to this GoFundMe from what it seems. However, someone who has is Natty and TJ. Obviously Natty, Neidhart and TJ. So nice of them to do so. But yeah, as Anthony said, the link will be in the video description. And if you've ever seen any kind of Nasty Boys tag team action, or were ever a fan of Brian, then yeah, obviously he needs people's help right now to get him the treatment he needs. So if you can afford to, then definitely drop him some money over there on his GoFundMe.
Real, yeah. So moving on as best we can, Carl, to the next one. We had a former NXT star. I will spoil it for you now. It was the one and only Bronson Reed, or formerly Bronson Reed, now known as Jonah. Has subtly, by all means, called out Miro. And this hint has come from his Twitter, where he's put, grinding in violence every moment is reality, of course. And if you look at the way he's put it on his Twitter, one line after the other, you can see he's clearly spelt out with the beginning letters, "Give me Miro." So some say this is a fairly obvious hint that he's maybe heading to AEW and maybe heading towards the TNT title. What do you make of this one, Carl? You were never a massive fan of Bronson. I'm not calling you out on it, Carl.
Oh,
you were never a massive fan of Bronson. I'm intrigued what you make.
I'm not, to be honest. Obviously, you might throw in my face, "Oh, it's a potential mirror match." We all know I'm a fan. But yeah, I don't particularly want to see him end up there, if I'm honest. I hope he ends up somewhere, Impact, somewhere like that. But I think there's a massive talent pool available to AEW at the moment, and they've got a massive roster as it is. I just think, Bronson Reed would just be completely lost in the shuffle, and he wouldn't really get anywhere in AEW, in my humble opinion. And it's not just him.
Accounts,
I think even Tyler.
You're going full Vince, I think, because by all accounts, the reason he was sort of cut from NXT, especially after North American title, and then suggestions that he's going to be heading over to the main roster. Ultimately, Vince didn't see anything in him because of the whole body type arguments. Once again, he didn't fit that mold that Vince had in his mind.
I disagree with that, to be fair, because you've got people like Otis and stuff like that who would be massive stars.
And Kevin Owens, who broke the mold as well.
Kevin Owens, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it's anything to do with that. I just never warmed to him as a character, or his personality or his charisma. So I think, yeah, I hope he does well somewhere. I just don't want to see it in AEW right now. I hope he breaks the WWE mold and goes to somewhere like Impact or something and proves that he can be a major star. I never, even when he was like North American champion, I was never really like, wow, this guy's a star. I was like, yeah, he's all right.
Thing for me, and it's nothing against Bronson. I was quite a fan of Bronson when he was in NXT. I don't want to see him in AEW either. I think there's only so many people AEW can pick up from all of these releases, and I don't think he's one of the ones that they should pick up. And I think you hit the nail on the head mentioning Impact, because I think this is a time for Impact to pick up some fucking amazing talent and re-establish themselves. Because obviously they have not reached the peak of where they were back in the TNA days before everything kind of imploded a little bit. This is a time to pick up some amazing talent and sort of build that roster back up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And hopefully he does. Hopefully a lot of them do. And it's the best time in a long time it's been for any pro wrestler to make it somewhere. There's that many opportunities now, so it doesn't always have to be AEW. And I think even Tyler Breeze came out and said, what do you think about going to AEW? Probably not right now, because he'd be lost in the shuffle. So I think that would be the same.
That's the most honest thing you can get, isn't it? Like, he knows exactly how it would be. And don't be wrong, the trouble is it's down to AEW. If Tonycan rocks up to anyone who's been released and goes, "Here's a big fat paycheck," they're going to want to go. But like you say, there is that potential to get lost in the shuffle. And I like to believe that Tony Khan is people who is going to help what he's building at the moment.
Yeah.
Rather than just picking it. Because they haven't picked, I know people like to joke about it, all ex-WWE and stuff like that, but they haven't really grabbed everybody who's been released. They've grabbed a handful, yeah, but like, it's not like they've got nuts. They've picked up the ones that clearly were going to have an impact. Look at Miro, look at Malachi. These were ones that had an actual really good impact on the company. So,
and obviously,
I think they know what they're doing.
If dirt sheets and speculation is to be believed, they're about to fork out contracts for CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, and potentially Bray Wyatt down the line. Yeah. So, it's it's not the best time for people right now to go somewhere and make a name. when you've got all that about to land. So
yeah, definitely.
So the next one to talk about CM Punk. Nice little segue. Nice little segue. I didn't realize I was doing it. So, he's a little troll, isn't he? He's a little troll. So he's done a couple of different things. Obviously, he posted a date on his Instagram. It was basically like bonfire night for us, wasn't it? So we were kind of like, us Brits, it was like 05, 11, 21. It was like, what does that even mean? But even Americans were like 11th of the 5th. What? May? We're in August. What's going on? So he's been kind of posting some random stuff. I think there was a lot of dates.
Some clever have worked out what those, or they think they've worked out what those numbers were. Did you see
it
that?
Like was it the Summer of Punks, or like when he made his kind of main event?
Apparently signed his first contract with WWE in 05 and re-signed in 11. So they reckon 21 is a sign that he's signing somewhere in 2021. I don't know how true that is, but that's one of the rumors I've heard as to what the numbers relate to.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, he's been doing various different things, just kind of like trolling people. But probably the biggest troll he's done. So he was on commentary on a mixed martial arts event for Cage Fury Fighting Championship, or CFFC, if they want to call themselves that.
Catchy.
But he was on commentary for that event. And his co-commentator basically said, he said, like in the, what did he put? Let me get the actual quote right. He said, like in the first round, Hoffman is just returning to his wrestling. You know what I'm saying, Punk? Returning to his wrestling. And CM Punk said, yeah, he's looking all elite right now. And so it's like, oh shit.
Nice. Thing is, like, even Punk's selling this to the point, if he does not show up, there's going to be so many pissed off people. This is going to be so much worse than anything else Khan's ever done if he has not already fucking signed this guy.
We know you weren't a big fan of the Christian announcement. This would be a whole different level. You'd be fucking raging. You would be fuming. But I think, like, the amount of build we've had, Punk is doing it. You've had Tonycan fucking doing it. The whole promo package for the first dance used Darby Allin's promo again about, you say you're the best in the world, and it was like, oh, okay, it's got to be. If it isn't, people are gonna go ape shit. Imagine if the big swerve is
moment Darby Allin stood in the ring, everything goes black, and then suddenly you hear, "I am a real American." And I'm like, oh no.
Well, I was gonna say, can you imagine if it was someone like Braun Strowman, or even like they chose that time to do Bryan Danielson, and it'd just be like, what the fuck. But yeah, everything seems to be.
A lot of people have said like they should have MJF build up heat and come out to cult personality.
Oh, I'd love it. I would love it.
That would be the most horrible trolling thing he could ever fucking do. There were so many people would be livid.
Oh, but even that would be on par, if not even like one upping based on the amount of hype. When Sean did it with Brett's music in Montreal, you know, just instant like fucking heel heat, and that's exactly what you need. So. Imagine something like that. But yeah, all the fucking cards are pointing towards him rocking up at the first dance. So all remains to be seen. That's one of the reasons he's the topic of our unique segment this week, is to talk about the amount of buzz that's been generated and what it's actually going to mean for AEW. So, interesting one. CM Punk is a troll.
I can't believe he didn't mention that he quoted Scott Steiner's infamous what was it? I'm trying to remember what the pay-per-view was called.
Sacrifice
promo from 08, which a lot of people didn't even realize that was Scott Steiner's promo when they read it. You see the comments like, "Oh, this reminds me of Scott Steiner." It's like, yeah, because that's Scott Steiner's
verbatim,
promo.
that's exactly what he said.
Because it's word for word. So the next one, Carl, is a bit of a confusing mess, actually. So Adam Cole, his contract is up, as we well know. His contract was up in July. He apparently has agreed to stay with NXT throughout August and deal with TakeOver 36, and his future is still up in the air. Apparently, he's had some high-power meetings with the likes of McMahon, etc., but the company have not yet offered him any long-term contract. Now, there's suggestions and there's been hints everywhere that they've been offering like $1 million contract. They've been offering this, they've been offering that. But what we've got is speculation from, and this is where you get like, you don't get specific names, but people high up in creative have apparently, when the inquiry about the $1 million contract has come up, they've sort of been quoted as saying, I wouldn't put too much stock into that $1 million offer. And the suggestion is that creative really don't have much desire. Like, this isn't necessarily a Vince McMahon thing by all accounts either, but there doesn't seem to be a big push for Adam Cole from the creative point of view of like, this is what we want to do with him. We need to sign him. We need this. So the suggestion is maybe the push to keep him isn't as big as they think. And then obviously we constantly get the rumors of like, well, is he going to go to AEW? The AEW connection's there with Britt Baker, obviously being his either wife or fiance. Apologies, I'm not sure their status. But basically, no news really. Everything's still up in the air, Carl. It's just interesting that apparently WWE's desire to keep him might not be as big as people thought it was. What do you make of this? Because he's been such a big deal on NXT for so long. Obviously, NXT is now going to be totally changed. So, we don't know what that's going to be in the future now because Vince is changing it because it didn't win the Wednesday Night Wars. That never happened.
Yeah. Bring the pitchforks out. I don't think he was ever going to work on the main roster.
No.
He doesn't have the look or, for what Vince wants. And you can say it's not necessarily Vince and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, he calls himself 6'4". He's more like 5'8". He is very slender build. He's got charisma, sure, but even then he's a bit one-dimensional with the boom stuff, isn't he? Or I'm Adam Cole, baby. It's just kind of catchphrases. So I just could never see him working on the main roster. I couldn't see any point where he fits in anywhere in a WWE main roster. That being said,
especially, and that's not against him, but it's the way they build their main roster. Like you say, you just don't see where he fits.
Yeah, that being said,
I honestly think that's a similar problem Finn Balor has, but here we are.
Yeah, I don't even know if I see him in AEW. Again, people can come out and force. I know he's a talent. I know he's a wonderful dude and all that kind of stuff. But I honestly just don't see where he fits in. But then again, you can say the same about Darby. You look at him and his stature and his look and stuff like that.
It's funny you mentioned Darby because I would argue that there is a place for him in AEW in that scene with the likes of Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin and so on like that. But they've got so much talent on that sort of, let's say, upper mid card. It's kind of confusing where you'd call them. Let's just call them mid card because it seems to fluctuate, especially with Orange Cassidy. There's that much talent there that it's like, well, do we need Adam Cole there?
Yeah, I think
I say we like I'm not saying about like that.
I think my worry is the fact that he's got the ties with the elite and stuff, and so you bring him in, and it's kind of like, what do you do with him? Like, do you put him back into that, and then that's kind of like a main event feud at the moment, and it's like I don't know. I'm trying to think what Jim Cornette calls AEW. He calls them something like, what is it? Basically, just implying that they're all small.
All petite wrestling.
There you go. All petite wrestling, and I think this would just give fucking Jim Cornette's just absolute fucking months worth of stories. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I think if he rocks up in AEW, I'm sure he'll do well. I think he'll have a better chance there than he would in the main roster in WWE. But remains to be seen. I think when the rumors came out of him getting a $1 million contract and stuff, I couldn't see it for the main roster personally. So interesting that this story's come out now. But at the end of the day, nobody knows anything. So all we have to do is wait and see what happens after his takeover match. If we don't see him, if he loses that match, and we don't see him again on the following takeover, you can probably assume that he's done, I would say.
How shit is it to go out on a match against Kyle O'Reilly?
For the fucking third time in that matter of months. Yeah.
Oh, how did you end your career in WWE? Well, I had 100 matches with one guy and then left. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, you talking about Gargano or Ciampa or what? Sorry, confused. I kid.
We're going to get some heat. People love Gargano and Ciampa's.
Yeah, all 187 matches. So the next one to talk about is Le Champion himself, Chris Jericho. 50 years old now, Anthony is 50 years old.
You wouldn't think it. Well, you wouldn't.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. But obviously, fucking legend. But he was on the Bubba Show on 100.7 Star this past week. And he basically was quoted as saying, "Whenever I have my last match, who knows when that might be. It all depends on what the storyline is and what's going on at the time. But I don't think I'm going to be one of those guys that's like, this is the last match, and it's the big brouhaha, whatever the fuck that is, and then cry at the end of it as Jericho wipes his tears away and goes, "Thank you for the memories. I'm not that type of guy. I don't care about that sort of stuff, so when I have my last match, you might not even know it." Now, there's been a lot of speculation with these labels of Jericho that this could even be his retirement tour. Like, if you look at the types of matches he had a death match, which he's never done before. He, had the fucking closing to the feud with Hoovy. So people were kind of speculating. I don't think it is, of course, but obviously it leads you to believe that he's doing this kind of stuff.
Honestly, like you say, he's done some. He's ticked a couple of boxes there. He's going to go out putting over a younger talent, go out on his back as wrestlers like to traditionally do. Presumably, if MJF wins, I'd be almost convinced of that. To be honest with you, I can totally see it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
I'm not ready for it. I'll be honest with you. I want Jericho in there. If he retires from ring action and carries on being around, I'll be happy, I suppose. But I'm not ready for that yet.
Yeah, we know for a fact that he is going to go on tour with Fozzy to the UK pretty soon as well. I think it's like the end of October, early November time. So you would imagine he'll be taking a hiatus anyway from AEW. So that could line itself up potentially with All Out if that's where they have the match.
Is the Fozzy tour anywhere near Liverpool?
Yeah, it's not far away, but the tickets are expensive.
I'm not talking tickets. I don't know if we want to pop in for a brew or nothing, Doors always open, Jericho.
Yeah, could do actually. Yeah, bring it in, guys. Bring it in. So I do imagine he'll be taking time off. Whether that means, to your point, this could be secretly his retirement, but I do doubt it. I think he'll be back at least for another run. But yeah, I definitely think this is like the first leg of the retirement tour. I don't think he's got much left in him, if I'm honest. And he's got a lot of options and a lot of things available to him of stuff that he wants to do. Interesting. Definitely. Remains to be seen, but you would think that we are potentially on that road now. So, yeah, a scary thought to think Jericho may have his final match one day. We won't even know it and just never see him back.
Because not only is he getting older, it makes me feel old that he's going to be retiring. I don't like it. Not ready for it. We just got Edge and Christian back. Come on, Jericho.
Come on.
So the next one, Carl. The next one. A purely speculative piece, so I won't linger on it too much. But we recently had a live event in Charlotte, North Carolina, for WWE. Said that with some gusto. I don't know why. And basically, we had Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks were scheduled to appear, and they were pulled from the show, and the reasons were given that due to unforeseen circumstances. So now, obviously, let's open the speculation and say, given that we don't know what the circumstances were and we've not seen them, is this putting potentially SummerSlam in jeopardy? Is something happened? Hopefully not. People, jump to COVID constantly with this now because of the way of the world. We don't know, obviously, unforeseen, so we have no idea. But there's this unfortunate sort of rumor that maybe they won't be able to have their match at SummerSlam. What do you make of this one?
Speculation running wild. I think they've missed a couple of shows now. Actually, I think when the original report came out, it was just that one. But I think there's been at least two, probably maybe even 3 or 4. Where they're meant to be.
Worry too much with these things, and you go, well, maybe they're playing it safe until the pay-per-view. There's no point putting yourself at risk or putting the pay-per-view match at risk. So maybe they're just playing it safe. But a concern.
Indeed, but yeah, hopefully the actual match does get to go ahead. But interesting that there's just been no kind of commentary on it or no kind of report from WWE about what it is, just the fact that it's unforeseen circumstances. So, hopefully it's not just everyone jumping to speculation of something like that, and it's not something, horrendous, like they've lost like a loved one or something really close to them. But you never know with these things. That's why it's, veiled as unforeseen circumstances and stuff. So, yeah, whatever's going on, hopefully we still get the match, and hopefully they're both fine, I guess.
Indeed.
The next one, this is bit of an interesting one, we spoke about the Wednesday Night Wars or almost lack thereof.
That never happens.
But it's become a bit of a hot topic, and the word on the grapevine is that the one and only Triple H himself, Paul Levesque, is being blamed backstage.
How can you be blamed for something that never happened?
Well, yeah, he's being blamed for not winning the Wednesday Night Wars that never existed, apparently. Because apparently WWE thought they would win easily. So...
Yeah. But WWE don't even care about. They're not even on WWE's radar. They don't even know the what's going on.
Exactly.
Let's forget the fact that Triple H on day one said it's a sprint. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Let's forget that. There never was a war. Ask anyone in the internet wrestling community who supports WWE.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm done bitching now.
But no, it's an interesting one. People are then kind of speculating, saying that like that's the reason why Karrion Kross on the main roster ended up losing twice, and then despite being heavily protected on NXT, and the same with Aliyah beating Dakota Kai ahead of a takeover title match. So basically, a lot of people are kind of saying that Triple H is almost being punished. That was a lot of the reason for the releases, which he apparently didn't know much about, and the people he have brought up and kind of taken off him as well. They're kind of not doing much with him and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a weird one. There was a point in time where NXT was really good. It was a good alternative. And then I think they have kind of gotten lost, and it's a shame, really. I think AEW coming into kind of prominence with it and them kind of changing every week what it was they tried to be. It's crazy the fact they ever came out and said there was no war there, because they started every week putting on some kind of theme show or to do everything they could to get the ratings.
Randomly had like Great American Bashes and stuff like that.
Exactly.
When they never used to do like a normal weekly show that was like branded in that way. That was correct me if I'm wrong, but that seemed to be an AEW thing where it's like it's not a pay-per-view, but we're calling this one like whatever they called it. I can't even remember their ones half the time. Blood and Guts.
They've had a million different ones.
Whereas NXT seemed to amp up doing that when AEW came along. You could see the parallels. I don't know why people always try and deny it. And I'm not like one of these people who's trying to like, it's the biggest thing. Like it's just like back in the Attitude Era days. Like, no, it's not going to be a bit as big a war as WCW going up against WWE, because both were big companies. But AEW was a fairly good competitor for NXT in terms of size, not the WWE, but NXT. And of course, there was a war, even if it doesn't even have to be unfriendly. Of course, there was a little bit of a battle for ratings. They're on the same night, and they're both similar companies. Why wouldn't you battle? Why wouldn't you keep an interest in that?
Yeah. Anyone who says it wasn't a thing is a damn dirty liar. But yeah, it's an interesting thought to think that the surefire lock to take over the company along with Steph, Triple H, is now in some serious hot water, to the point where imagine Triple H gets released.
So many people are talking like Nick Khan has got Vince McMahon's ear, and he's the reason that so many things are happening, so many cuts are happening. And you go, well, how can someone come along like the devil in Vince's ear and be like, sack everyone, even that one, the most popular one who sells all your merch, sack him. I don't care. Get rid of them all. Burn it to the ground, Vince. Like, I don't believe he's got that much influence over the man, but like a lot of people are believing like that's the man who's got his ear, and that's what's happening to the likes of NXT and the likes of Bray Wyatt and so on and so on.
But no, I mean it's a scary thought, isn't it? Because Triple H, even though he's his son-in-law and stuff, he's not a McMahon. So imagine if he does just go, sorry, Paul, it's not worked out.
Let's face it, that man has put business over things before now.
Well, exactly. Like, imagine that world where Triple H is a free agent. Where does he go? Does he go to AEW? Does he go to the Indies? Does he try and do a Jeff Jarrett and start his own thing? Like, who fucking knows?
I could see him pulling a Jeff Jarrett and doing his own thing,
Yeah. I don't think he would go and work for Cody and stuff. He wouldn't. It'd be beneath him in his eyes, wouldn't it? But
no, yeah. At the most, I think you might see him turn up and have a match or something like that. I don't think he'd be there properly.
Yeah. But I mean, all speculation. I can't see this ever happening anyway, especially at the point where he gets released.
He holds shares in the company and everything. He's too ingrained in the WWE realistically. But honestly, Carl, right, as an OG NXT fan, let's take AEW out of the equation. Do you think that something needed to happen with NXT? Because it did seem to lose a bit of its luster, if we're being honest.
I mean, NXT has been awful the past year, if not more, year and a half, 2 years, probably longer. But
it might feel like a bit of an overreaction from Vince, but do you feel like something did need to happen maybe not as drastic as it has happened, but do you think they did need to shake it up?
The problem is, though, for me, I don't think the format has changed too much at all. I think it's the talent.
Nothing's really,
they benefited from, like, you look at all the people who've come up through there, and now you look at the roster and you're just kind of like, well, none of them really are going to make it to the main roster.
It's a little bit of a curse thing, isn't it? Because you look at like younger talent coming up to WWE, and you go, oh, they're not like, you don't have another Stone Cold or another John Cena or another Jericho or this, that, and the next thing, right? And now we're getting to a point where you're looking at the NXT talent and we go, well, we don't have another Seth Rollins or another Roman Reigns, it's like we've found this weird position where, like, apparently Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns and all these guys aren't good enough. Like, they're not going to be the next Stone Cold, or they're not going to be like these big money guys, but they're still better than what we got in NXT. It's weird.
Yeah,
like,
no, you know what, that
people is insane.
That is a fantastic point, and I think the way that it's now looked at is they're looking at NXT and going, oh, they're not going, well, there isn't another Stone Cold in there. They're saying there isn't another, fucking Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, whatever. So it's almost like, and no disrespect to these dudes either, but it's like they're kind of lowering the expectations now of the system.
Well, that's the thing, and that's why I use it, because like people might argue that they could and should be, in the same sort of, what's the word, tier or echelon as the likes of Stone Cold and that by now. But the fact is, that's the kind of shit they were getting. Like, all this younger talent coming in, which were the likes of Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns, all that. They didn't hold a candle to all our Attitude Era people who we loved. And it's been said more than once that WWE stopped making big stars like The Rock, which it feels like they have. So yeah, you're right. It does feel a bit like they've lowered the standards, and like, we're looking for the next Seth Rollins and Roman, and that's no disrespect to them, but like you say, they're not looking for the next Rock, are they?
No. Interesting.
Indeed. You want to hear something else interesting, Cal?
Cool.
So you might recall that Max Caster had a bit of a disaster when he tried to go after. No, I'm not going to keep doing it. So obviously he cut a rap, if you will, on an episode of Dark, and that caught, I think we talked about it last week, to be fair, so I won't go into too much detail, but it caught a bit of attention, a bit of controversy, and merited a response from Tonycan, good old Tone, about him needing to sort of keep a closer eye on the editing for Dark, and it should never have aired, and so on like that. And it seems he caused a bit of heat for that, and he's not actually been seen on Dark or on AEW since, by all accounts. And now we've recently had him putting up his ring sort of attire, his tights, knee pads, and all that kind of thing, for sale, autographed, and with the line saying he's not going to be needing them. I don't think I'll be needing these anymore, was the line he put in there. So a lot of people are speculating, is he in the bad, is he leaving AEW, so on and so on. But a lot of people are heavily suggesting that this is a work. He's using what's happened, and he's making people think that he's caught some major heat from it, and this is all just sort of, we might as well make use of what's happened. What do you make of this, Carl? Because I think this is, if there's any sort of risk of his job at this point, this is a massive overreaction. There was apparently it wasn't true, but there was a thing that went out as well saying that he was going to be on sensitivity training and so on like that. Apparently that was a false report. So we don't know if Khan's found him or done anything like that. And to be honest, like, it's a promo that didn't work out and might have offended some people. Does it really merit sensitivity training and a fine? His whole gimmick was to be edgy, so
Yeah, that's the weird thing with it. If he is on sensitivity training and they have taken it super seriously like that, then it doesn't make sense for him to be trolling it and making light of that situation by doing what he's doing. But then if they're saying, people are saying that wasn't the case in the first place, then maybe he is just trolling people. But it's hard to know without knowing all the details. The fact is, since this has happened, we haven't seen him.
Yeah.
And
I think this would be a real crying shame, though, if like this isn't like him sort of trolling and buying into it, and he is actually selling his gear and he doesn't think he's going to be in AEW anymore. I think that would be a real shame. I think as much as you can, I'm not going to argue whether you should or shouldn't be offended by what he said, but do you really think this should ruin someone's career?
No, I don't think so. Unfortunately, we're at a point in time where, a lot of things are taken very seriously by a lot of people, and unfortunately that kind of stuff can cost people their jobs. But I hope that it isn't the case for him. If he did overstep the marks and things like that, then fair play. But he should be able to bounce back from that, in my opinion. But we'll see. Yeah. Hopefully it's not a case of cancel culture where he's just gone, never to be spoken of again. And hopefully, he does get another opportunity. If he continues to do stuff in spite of this and against the company's wishes, then okay, fine. So it ultimately comes down to the company. Either the company are happy for him to do this kind of level of raps, or they're happy for him to do it, but at a certain kind of cut-off point. And I think that's what Tonycan alluded to, was the fact that he goes over the promos with him normally, or the raps, and signs them off, but he doesn't do it for Dark. And then unfortunately this one has gone out there, and people have reacted quite negatively to it. So yeah, I think it's one of them.
Like, freedom of speech, but let's edit everything in your promo because I don't want the company to be in trouble. It's crazy. Yeah. And again, I'm not condoning, it's weird trying to find that line, because I'm very much like, well, that's meant to be his character. You're not meant to like him. He's meant to say things that you don't like. But yeah, I mean, when's too offensive? It's such a weird sort of.
It is. Everyone's got a different threshold, haven't they? You know what I mean? Like we, in terms of our personality and like sense of humor and stuff, like we like quite offensive comedians by what people might consider to be offensive. Yeah. People think Ricky Gervais is too offensive. People think Jimmy Carr is too offensive. They're just examples of people that we've laughed at in the past and think are quite funny. Yeah, exactly, and we don't particularly take offense to stuff in that way, but at the end of the day, people will always be offended by stuff that you say, and I guess it's that fine line between getting your kind of character or your humour across and trying to cause as minimal real offences as you can, I guess.
I just worry for, like, let's say Max Caster isn't gone, he isn't done, right? And I hope that's the case. And we get to a point when, okay, he's still writing his raps, but Tony Khan has to then approve them. Are we then ultimately going to get to a point where Tony Khan goes, yeah, that's fine, and it's not? And then Tony Khan's under a lot of heat for allowing something like that. It just feels like a ticking time bomb for me, just allowing any sort of gimmick like this now.
I mean, I think, to be fair to Tony, he did say that he wasn't happy with it, but I don't think he kind of threw him under the bus. He said, I'm going to step up and make sure that I'm in charge of editing for it. So I think he did try and kind of shoulder the brunt of the blame.
And I can totally appreciate that. I just think that, like, people got upset with that, but let's say it was something that Tony had approved. What do you do then when people are massively upset over something you've approved? Do you take that on the chin, or do you then go, well, we can't keep doing these things? Because I think ultimately that's where they're going to go to. They're going to go, Max Caster as a character with that gimmick isn't going to work, and I think it's only a matter of time before that Tony allows something through the editing room that offended people too much.
Yeah, it's always going to be a fine line, isn't it? I think it's hard to know where that line is anymore these days, and it seems to change where the line is on a constant basis.
I don't know.
Back in my day, the line was way high. But yeah, no, it's one of them. I think it's a constant moving target at the moment, but it's one of them. It's easy for us to kind of go, oh, well, it's not really that offensive, because the types of things that were talked about have no implications for us. So you can see why people would be offended by certain things.
Like personally, really.
Yeah, so it's one of them. We can sit here and go, it was a joke and it wasn't that offensive, but there will be people out there who are, severely offended by it, and it's one of them. I guess it's trying to find that line, but to your point, it's how sustainable is a gimmick like that. Hopefully, it's something which can continue, because I quite enjoy his raps. There's been stuff he's done in the past that I've just thought were fantastic and brilliant, and just that right level of of comedy mixed with kind of heel work. So
yeah, no, I enjoyed them, and as I say, but you could argue there'd only be a matter of time before he says something that upsets me.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think it's in like I don't know. I don't think I'd like sort of be like, it needs to be cancelled, but like he could very well at some point say, like, let's say he cuts a promo where he just they're doing the AEW tour in the UK and he just goes after British people, and then suddenly I've got something to be offended by. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just never know. Like that's the nature of the beast, isn't it? But it's one of them. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a shame because I do like the gimmick. That's all I'll say.
It's always one of them. Like for me, and it's a terrible example, but like it's one of them. Like, don't go to SeaWorld and sit in the front row if you don't want to get wet. You know what I mean? And it's like it's the same.
I was fucking splashed.
And it's like it's the same. It's the same for pro wrestling. It's like it is what it is. There's a higher chance of you getting a fucking offended watching pro wrestling than there is you watching Little House on the Prairie. You know, so it's like make your own decisions, I guess, in terms of the type of stuff you want to watch. But
yeah. I think this is the trouble, and this is where I struggle with where you draw the line, because, and this is in no way a fair comparison, but it's like when people have watched Jericho's death match and been like, it was a bit bloody, that one. Not keen on that. It's like, well, you did sit down and watch a death match, so had to expect a little blood, right? So I know, but and again, it's not a fair comparison because I know people didn't expect Max to come out and they don't really know what he's going to say, so it's not like you can prepare yourself and go, well, this is just my cup of tea, yes or no. But it is kind of a closer to the knuckle product. It's not your WWE PG product, is it? So
no, definitely. But yeah, I think before we get cancelled, all we can say is hopefully he does bounce back. Hopefully we see him again, and hopefully the raps he does continue to be brilliant heel raps, but cause less offence for people in the future, I guess.
And make more Boondocks references. We liked it when you did that.
Yeah, do more of that shit. And then lastly, to talk about, so spoilers, if you're watching this before you watch This Week in Wrestling, but Christian Cage did defeat Kenny Omega to become the Impact World Champion. Now, as we know, I can't remember how long ago it was, but Moose brought back the TNA title, and we ended up kind of having like a unification match not too long ago with Rich Swann, I think. And effectively that meant there was two titles. There's the Impact title and the TNA title. So obviously when Kenny Omega became the champion, he still had both belts. They were unified, but they weren't kind of unified into one belt, basically.
You seem to have one match for both, but because you couldn't defend them separately.
So similar to what we did back in the day with Jericho when he became the first undisputed champ. Exactly. So that's kind of the approach they were going with. But obviously Christian Cage has won the belt now, and spoilers from the TNA, the Impact World Championship has now been kind of unified effectively to the point where the TNA title has been retired. So on the August 16th episode, there was a scene there basically where Christian handed the TNA title back to David Penza, and basically they took it off the screen and kind of saying that it's only going to be the Impact title now going forward. So I
really liked that it was Christian who did this as well.
I mean, obviously he's got a lot of history. He's got a lot of history there in the company, and I think it's one of them that the whole storyline at the time was different but interesting. The fact of why have we got this? And I don't know whether you're the same. It still confuses me to this day. I still refer to them as TNA, they're not, or it's at the end of the day they've rebranded. They are Impact Wrestling. They need to just move away from them, TNA connotations if they can, if they want to be.
I wasn't fully watching it at this point, but are they was the TNA thing? Are they just trying to pull away from sort of the Dixie Carter days? Is that what's gone on there?
I honestly don't know. I think obviously it used to be part of the NWA, so it was NWA TNA, and then it was just Total Nonstop Action. Then it was TNA. Then they had something with Global Force. Then it was no, we're just Impact, but we're bringing back the TNA title. The whole thing's been a bit of a mess. So I think it's a good thing for them to just go, okay, we're not TNA anymore, but Impact. And if you're gonna do that, cool, just go with it. So hopefully that's what this means, and they'll kind of use this as their identity going forward. And so kind of retiring that TNA belt is the last thing that's got the connotations with the old kind of branding. But interesting one. I think to your point, the fact that Christian did it is a nice little touch. It'd
have been better than Omega doing it. He has more sort of, not that Omega didn't, but Christian has more respect for the history of the TNA title, so it just makes sense that he's the man who sort of retired it out. Yeah,
definitely. And that was it. That was all the news this week, Anthony.
Yeah,
all the news. And we'll be back to talk about CM Punk in AEW and whether it's a good thing or not after the lovely words from these lovely people.
You're watching or listening listen to A to the K.
The A2theK.
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 These guys are awesome. Check it out.
Check it out. Change your life. You'll be thanking me later.